It is a post-victory and post-history edition of the Pick Six coming up this week. The dynamic duo back to recap what was a historic comeback led by Jordan Love, a Packers 2-1 start to the season, whether or not the defense maybe deserves a little more credit than we're giving them. And of course, we will look ahead to Thursday Night Football against the Lions. What a huge game that is. It's all coming up on the next hour on the Pick Six. Welcome to the post-week 3 edition of the Pick Six on the Game On Wisconsin family of social media channels. I am Brendan Dzwierzynski. He is Handsome, and we are here with you for the next hour as we get you ready for Lions Week for the Packers and, of course, recap what was an incredible Week 3 for the Green Bay Packers. And Mr. Packers Central writer Jacob Westendorf himself was in the building, up in the box, got to see that up close and personal. Be honest, is that the best performance you have gotten to see in person at Lambeau Field?
No. No. There are others. Aaron Rodgers against Dallas in the playoffs, the Dez Bryant game, especially in that fourth quarter, comes to mind.
Decent.
I was at the 6 touchdown performance in the first half against the Bears, but that doesn't count because, Brendan, have you ever wondered, do you know why Rockford, Illinois does not have a professional football team?
I'm going to guess because it's about a 10th the size of a nearby city that's only an hour and a half away?
No, the answer, though, is related to that. Because of the city that's about 10 times bigger, if Rockford had a pro football team, then Chicago would want one too. So I guess that doesn't really count that Rodgers and company got to do that against a minor league franchise. It's just hilarious for the Bears now at this point. The setting here, Taylor Swift was in Kansas City, and that is a huge deal. If I know about it, it's a huge deal because I don't pay attention to pop culture at all. And the fact that I knew that she was in the stadium spiked the viewership of this game. So more people got to watch the Bears embarrass themselves on that day. But best performance I've ever seen? No. There are others. It was a very ugly 3 quarters and then a fourth quarter that made you think like, hey man, they just kind of played one of the worst games they could have and they found a way to win. Like, what is the ceiling for this team once they get some of their guys back and if they can play well? Because Brendan, I don't know how you felt, but when I saw the inactives report, I was like, okay, this isn't like, I even told my cousin who asked me every week, pick 5 teams that are going to win, which I imagine is for jelly bean wagering purposes. And
Sure.
After I saw the inactives, I told him, I was like, pick New Orleans or something like that. And then after the game was over, I sent him a message. Was like, I sincerely hope you did not add New Orleans to that list because of me, because I would have felt bad if he won 4 out of 5 and changed out New Orleans for somebody else. But I think he had Jacksonville and Dallas, both of which took turns embarrassing themselves in the 12 o'clock and the 3 o'clock hour.
I was going to say, even if it's not the most, the most memorable for one reason or another, it is going to go down as a game that thankfully is remembered more so for being the, historic and having the comeback as opposed to being remembered for a awful football game for 3 quarters. Like it wasn't fun. Like there was nothing enjoyable about that game. And we're going to get to the defense specifically a little bit later. It wasn't exactly like, oh man, what an all-time great showdown of elite defenses. Nah, it just kind of sucked. Like Derek Carr wasn't great when he was out there. Jameis is Jameis. We know what Jameis is at this point. He, at least according to one person, is 1 of 1. And for all the right and all the wrong reasons at the same time, Jameis is 1 of 1. And the Packers looked like crap. Like it was a crappy game. No Watson, no Jones, no Bakhtiari, no Jenkins, no Jair. Like it was a crappy game for a lot, but thankfully it ended positively for the Packers. Now we could remember it for all those positive notes. We'll get to that coming up here throughout the course of the show. We do want to get to our extra point for this week, and this is a great teaser for a little bit later on, Jacob, when we get to previewing Lions Week. And you even had this in our show notes, themed with Detroit Rock City. Favorite rock band. Perfect way to set this up. By the way, one of the better Kiss songs. Whenever you think about Kiss, Detroit Rock City,
Oh,
major
hell yeah.
roll the windows down, turn up the radio kind of song. So I'm actually curious what your answer is, because you are something of a metalhead yourself. You are something of a rock aficionado yourself.
I am. It is I always tell people that whenever somebody asks what kind of music you like, the go-to answer for everyone is, oh, I like a little bit of everything. I don't. I have a very narrow music taste. It's opening up a little bit as my daughter gets a little bit older and likes to listen to some stuff. But for me, it's mostly like 90s country and then rock and roll. And that could be something as light as like, well, Mr. Brightside by the Killers is cheating because it's an Ann Arbor tradition apparently now, but I do like that song. But it could be something like that. It could be something as heavy as like Beartooth. And I really like Beartooth. That was a finalist for this list. I feel like I had to go through 2 eras to answer this question. I grew up on Motley Crue, so that is definitely my favorite. And I have been to each of their last 4 tours, and they've sounded worse each time. And I did not care. Because that was the group, man. I loved them in high school. And then both of these bands kind of shaped my childhood a little bit. Is Volbeat's a good one, or not my childhood, I shouldn't say that, but they kind of shaped my life a little bit, I guess, musically. Motley Crue was one, and then Avenged Sevenfold, both old school and new. Really the first real rock concert that I saw in person was Avenged Sevenfold. They were here at the BMO Harris Bank Center, which is more known as the Metro Center if you grew up in the area like I did. But yeah, Avenged Sevenfold is awesome. Their new album sucked, which was really disappointing because they haven't come out with new music in like 5 years, but that's okay. I'll move on and remember the Nightmare album and everything that came before that, which was really good. You're right. Yeah, Gil, they're awesome. It's a great show. And I've watched like the YouTube videos of the concerts that people completely legally tape while they're in the stands of a concert, and they still sound good. I just didn't go to this leg of the tour because I thought the new album was terrible, and that's how they play. Most of the tour is trying to sell the new album. So those are the big 2. I've got some others. I listen to, a decent amount of music. I mentioned Beartooth. I mentioned some others. Like, I like a lot of stuff in that genre, but those are definitely my 2 favorites.
So I definitely apparently have a wider range of stuff I listen to. Like, I listen to a lot of, 80s kind of metal. Like, I love Iron Maiden, things like that.
Sure.
I'll get to my answer, which is in a similar vein in a second. I listen to a good amount of country music, not a lot of Nashville stuff, but a lot of country. I've lived in Kansas for 10 years. Like, it happens when you live out here. And I go to a lot of small towns.
But when you say country music, do you mean like I said 90s country music, so Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, stuff like that? Or do you mean like the Bo Burnham Stadium country music that he makes fun of?
No. So I like Garth. I like Alan Jackson. I'm going like currently like Turnpike Troubadours, Zach Bryan, things like Zach Bryan, not Luke Bryan. Make sure you note that, because I would not listen to a Luke Bryan song these days. Not a big fan of radio country. I do like Luke Combs. I like Luke Combs plenty. But like Haley Whitters, Texas country, Red Dirt, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that. I listen to a good amount, rap, hip hop. Kendrick Lamar, one of my all-time favorites. Wu-Tang, if you want to throw back. Listen to a lot of Wu-Tang Clan, the various affiliates. Rock-wise, though, stuff I've listened to my entire life. Metallica is number 1. There is no question in my mind. Metallica is number 1. I've only gotten to see them once. I'm currently debating going to see them again on their current tour for one of their dates in St. Louis. But they're number 1 with a bullet. We have Gil in the YouTube
tour. I've been to St. Louis, once. I could find a reason to go down there again. Doesn't strike me as an Abby concert, but maybe it is.
No. So fittingly, she is out of town. She doesn't mind it. Her parents listened to a lot of that stuff when she was growing up. But it's St. Louis weekend of Packers Rams. That's the debate. That's right. I got to know if I'm going to Lambeau or if I'm going to go see Metallica. It's like literally 2 of my favorite things in the world. So that's making it quite challenging. But yeah, Metallica, The Offspring, one of my favorites of all time, Bad Religion. But Gil, as I said, mentioned Alice in Chains. They're phenomenal. I just saw Queens of the Stone Age this past Wednesday.
I just saw that. Yeah, I remember.
Oh my God. They're so, I don't like saying the F word on the podcast, but they're so freaking good. incredible live. I've seen them a couple times live. So yeah, that's kind of the move for me. But yeah, Metallica's number one. They're always going to be number one for me.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention them. It's Master of Puppets, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Jamal Williams listens to that song before every game he plays in. He told us once, which is cool. And I actually listened to it before every game that I played in my crappy high school wishbone football career, where I was a 225-pound offensive lineman. And so that was good. Yeah, Metallica is awesome. I saw them at Soldier Field with Avenged Sevenfold. That is the best concert I've ever been to. And I saw them in Madison, and I couldn't find my car after the show. That was not fun, walking around the street. Thankfully, it was like, Madison and not some other not so great area town to be in kind of thing. And this was before the days of me knowing how to like drop my pin for like, okay, this is where I'm parked. I literally just had to walk around the city and be like, I kind of remember this thing and that thing. And then I just started pushing buttons on my key, hoping to find it. And then I saw the lights flash, and I was just relieved. Like, thank God I can drive home now.
All right, let's get to the actual football here. That's a good topic. That was a good. Jacob comes up with most of our extra points. That was an A+. Great interaction with everyone. Jacob, gold star for you. All right, football. Gold star for the fourth quarter for the Packers. Quarters 1 through 3 look more like my report cards when I was growing up. Garbage, bad. See me after class. Give this to your parents and have them scold you at home. Like it was awful. I mean, the defense, I think, probably got ragged on more than it deserved. And again, we'll get to them more specifically in a little bit. I know I was all in my feelings on Twitter because I still cannot be an adult and not emotionally react to everything immediately as I see it. But then it all turned. And QB1, number 10, Jordan Love, power of love, addicted to love, whatever you want to call him, whatever Chris Bermanism you want to use for his name.
Come on, dude. We just talked about Kiss.
Love gun.
He pulled the trigger on him. He pulled the trigger on my love gun with that performance.
You're goddamn right about that. No, I mean, he stayed poised. He stayed calm. And it worked out. Like, I don't even really know how else to address it or get into it other than just he was calm. He didn't panic. The guys around him didn't panic. And despite being shorthanded, not having your two best offensive linemen and your two best offensive weapons, they made it work. And are the Saints great shakes? No, their defense is nasty. We were right. I mean, that defense is still sick. Their offense is like it's fine.
I don't know if this is possible, but they looked better in person than and not only are they good, like they're good in general, but they had guys like Isaac Yiadom had the game of his life, and he actually stinks. But Alante Taylor, I was sitting there. Bill Huber said, like in the middle of the third quarter, he's defensive player of the week. And I was like, yeah, probably. And then Rashawn Gary decided to sack the quarterback 3 more times after that. And I don't know if they've given out those awards or not yet for last week, but like Alante Taylor was the best player on the field until he wasn't. And that defense is nasty for New Orleans. Their offense, like you said, Chris Olave is good. Michael Thomas looks like he's running in quicksand. Like, I don't know if he can run. Yeah, and he wasn't that, but I just don't even the slants don't look explosive anymore. It's like, yeah, he'll get you 7, but that's about it. He's not going to break that many, if any, tackles. And I don't know. They definitely miss Alvin Kamara. That was something I wonder how different is this game if he's not playing, but that's life in the NFL. How different is the game if Aaron Jones and Christian Watson and David Bakhtiari play? A lot of people, the fans of rival teams always like to say, well, they lost this guy. Cool. But Green Bay was playing without some of their guys too. So
it's the NFL. There is no easy win. There is no easy game in the National Football League. And I think we've addressed this before, and I'll let you get to your point in a second. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I always hear oh man, like you want to beat this team at full strength. Like, no, I want them to be fully healthy. No, I do not give a shit if everyone is healthy. Wins are wins. They count all the same. There are no asterisks in the win column. Win however it takes. If that means I didn't wish Derek Carr got hurt. Carr gets hurt. Like tough stuff, man. Like that's football. That's the real world. Packers didn't have 5 of their 6 best players in the game. Maybe their 5 very best players on the whole team were not playing in the game. So I don't want to hear any of that.
No, and like I said, the only injury that I ever give a quote-unquote excuse for is if the starting quarterback doesn't play the entire game. But the drop-off from Derek Carr to Jameis Winston is not that dramatic. Like, it's not like going from Aaron Rodgers to Brett Hundley. It's Derek Carr and Jameis Winston. Like, they're the same-ish kind of player. Like, and Jameis was fine, but I thought the Packers defense was pretty badass for most of the game. I mean, there's a few things that maybe weren't that aesthetically pleasing. There's a couple things that like make you roll your eyes and shake your head a little bit. Sure. It's kind of the byproduct of how things work, but 4 sacks, and not only Corey Ballantyne was playing cornerback for this team by the end of the game. He was called up from the practice squad on Friday. Like there is no, oh God, I can't even imagine what this is going to end up being, but there is no substitute for something. Like sometimes the next man up just sucks, and that's how that works. So Green Bay got a win. Their defense was good, and their offense in the fourth quarter made enough plays. And really, they moved the ball the whole game. They just couldn't get out of their own. Like the penalties for this team, huge concern. They have 27 penalties through 3 games. They started the game with a holding penalty and then a false start, and it was 1st and 25, like right off the jump. That's hard. They converted that and ended up still having to punt. They gave up a punt return for a touchdown, which maybe we need to start having a Rich Bisaccia conversation too. Like, I don't know, but there's a lot to like about the win. And then, there was a look on Matt LaFleur's face after the game where they asked him, like, what do you need to correct? And he just kind of went, a lot. Like, oh my God, there was so much that we screwed up in this game. And there's a lot going on. The True North, Enigbari struggled setting the edge. I wonder, because when Gary got to the NFL, he was a really good run defender, really good edge setter. Lucas Van Ness is a good edge setter right now. Preston Smith was a good run defender when he got to Green Bay and good at setting the edge. And all of them have gotten worse about those things. I wonder if that's kind of a way they're coaching things, just saying, don't worry about this so much. We'll make up for it on the bat. Like that's kind of remember that when Blake Martinez said a couple years ago, his job in the defense was basically make Z or Preston right. Well, yeah, that might be part of it. I don't know if that is or not, but I'm happy with 2-1. I could tell you when the fourth quarter started and thinking about 1-2 with Detroit on deck. I mean, now they'll get through 4 games at worst at 2-2, and you'll feel like pretty good about their setup. Like the Raiders stink. Jimmy Garoppolo may or may not play in that game. And even if he does, fine. Yeah. Like Devontae's going to have a big night because he's Devontae, but that's it. Then 2 weeks they play against a team that just gave up 70 points, and Sean Payton's wondering why the hell he isn't still in Fox's booth. Like they're in a good spot, even though like there's just so much that feels like is not going right, but it's so much is not going right. And some of those guys like Aaron Jones sure sounds like he's going to play. Christian Watson said the plan is for him to play. I mean, I just want to see, what does it look like? Maybe not when they have all their dudes, because I don't know if that's ever possible, but can we get most of their dudes to see what this is supposed to look like?
Yeah. So first, I had to grab it, and I was pointing to it earlier. Had to grab the Washburn Ichabod's helmet here. I will not say a bad word about Corey Ballantyne. I am going to ignore the tape. I don't love to do that. I'm going to ignore any tape, and I'm going to do nothing but give shout-outs to Washburn Ichabod's great and Shawnee Heights High School graduate Corey Ballantyne, who is super fast and is a nice guy, and also survived literally getting shot the night he got drafted. So I am not going to say any bad words about Corey Ballantyne.
He honestly did okay too. Like he had a pass breakup on a deep ball that Jameis threw, the ball Olave caught against him. He was right there. Like Chris Olave is just going to be a star, so he's going to do that he could do that to Jair Alexander for all we know. Like Jair didn't play, so obviously we don't know that. But I thought Ballantyne, all things considered, I mean, do I want him to start this week against Detroit? No, but I don't want him to play at all either. Like, I mean, that's just common sense, obviously. But
sure,
I mean, he's not the guy. He's not going to get the player of the game when we do this later. But he's one of those guys that like you make a footnote of, hey, not bad, kid. All things considered.
Well, and it needed to be all hands on deck in this game because of all the injuries, because of all the guys who were inactive, and because, frankly, the team sucked for 3 quarters. 45 minutes of this game, the Packers looked terrible, or alternately, they would have a glimmer of promise, like you were mentioning earlier, only to then take a shotgun to the foot and blow it up and completely go backwards. So to me, there's reason to be discouraged about a lot, and the majority of the game is probably what you should focus on in terms of long-term evaluation. Like, hey, what are the things to be improved on? Why did these things go poorly? The injuries obviously play a role in it. The penalties are a major and infuriating problem. And maybe if the offensive line was healthier, maybe if you had your two best veterans out there, that looks a little bit different. It's hard to say. It's life. Things happen. You move on. You adjust as best as you can. So I understand that. But it's also similarly not hard, or it is hard to not be impressed by what you saw out of this team late because, and I know Twitter blew up about this and fairly rightfully so, the narrative has been since Matt LaFleur took over, save for a very small number of games. And you can, like, the Colts game in, what was that, 2019, I believe it was, like games where the Packers were losing, they looked bad. I got punched in the mouth and they actually responded. The punch in the mouth. That's the phrase that everyone uses because so many times you think of Vikings opener, the Saints opener, that one game against the Buccaneers early in the season. Like the team just looked dead tired. They looked flat. They looked like they had no chance. But to get hit like that, to go down 17-0, to look miserable, both in terms of execution and body language for a lot of that game, and to then come back and still win and to man up, to nut up. And I don't mean to be misogynistic saying that, but I mean, to show toughness, to show grit, to show, hey, we know, to show belief, if nothing else, that says a lot. And it says a lot about these dudes on this team. And that is really impressive. And I think really important. And that brings us then to the guy who was at the centerpiece of all of that. And that is QB1. That's Jordan Love. And he wasn't good for a lot of the game. I think you even mentioned that on Twitter at one point, Jacob, during the game. You were responding to someone.
And I learned the hard way. Damn, man, there are people that do not like if you say, even suggest Jordan Love does not walk on water. Like, oh man.
Yeah. And look, like, he gets the credit for the comeback. I think you also have to be fair and say he was not, I do not think he was the problem. He was a problem. He was not the problem why the Packers fell behind 17-0. I don't think his wide receivers did him a whole lot of help. I think the defense struggled in certain moments. Special teams certainly didn't do him any favors with that big punt return touchdown. But there's the bad, and you acknowledge that, and you say there's things that need to be worked on. The accuracy is an issue. Like, we can be blunt about that. The accuracy is a major problem. But the good is still good. And the fact that he did stay poised, that things didn't seem to rattle him. He's had to deal with some shit. I mean, we are aware of that. He has had a more difficult start to his career than a lot of first-round picks have to start their career.
And life. Really like I said this last night to Jacob Morley, like, playing football is easy for this guy. And again, I say this and I keep bringing it up, but I don't want Jordan Love's tragic past to become this cute, like, anecdote for him. But it's easy for him, like, again, football compared to that. And if you guys don't know the situation, check out Tyler Dunn's initial story on Go Long about Jordan Love. And it just kind of goes through Jordan Love's past, his background, everything like that. Football's easy compared to all that stuff. So what he's doing now, but I think the one thing that I learned the most about Jordan Love this week, and maybe this won't matter because, you know, like, and what I'm about to say was like true of Tim Tebow as well. And Tim Tebow sucked at football, at playing quarterback at least. Sorry to any Florida Gator fans that are watching this, but it's true. I think intangibly, Jordan Love has everything you want in a quarterback. He's never rattled. He's poised. Matt LaFleur, Jason Wilde asked a question on Sunday after the game, and he said something along the lines of, like, in the past, quarterbacks blew up when, like, Patrick Taylor didn't, and LaFleur kind of smirked a little bit when he said that. But, like, he's always kind of cool and collected. He's pretty smooth with stuff. And, like, he just keeps coming. And sometimes that's bad. Like, sometimes that will be not a good thing. And, you know, that none of that is really going to matter if he keeps missing deep balls to Luke Musgrave, if he keeps missing inside on passes that need to get to the outside or whatever. But, you know, the highs for Jordan Love are as good as anyone else's in the league. Like, I don't like comparing, like, the comparisons that I'm seeing today about his statistics versus, say, like, Patrick Mahomes. Like, we don't need to compare Jordan Love to Patrick Mahomes. Just, you're asking to get memed when that happens. And yeah, I think there's some truth to that too. Like Love's always going to be a little inaccurate. The the ball placement and everything's going to be a little spotty. That's just kind of how he is. But
he's also following Aaron Rodgers, who very rarely for most of his career had those problems. Like I think, and I know I need to adapt to this. Like we're never going to see that again. Like the odds of any of us in our lifetime seeing that kind of accuracy, even from other good, maybe great, maybe Hall of Fame level quarterbacks, it's just not going to happen.
No. And that's okay. Like Jordan Love could still be really good without being that. The problem with Jordan Love and the offense kind of as a whole, not just him, is the lows are like Drew Lock, Deshaun Kaiser, name your crappy Packer quarterback prospect that they probably liked. And we know they liked Kaiser. They traded for him. We know they liked Locke. They interviewed him before the draft. It's possible. But if the phrasing that we keep using is like, can he raise the floor? Can they get more consistent? It's very similar. Ross Uglum had this comparison. I'm going to liken him to like Joey Gallo. The highs are incredibly high. They're 480-foot moonshot bombs. And the lows are he strikes out 230 times in a season. Like that's just hard to be a really productive player that way. Now, that being said, the degree of difficulty is relatively high. Like he's playing with rookie receivers essentially. And Romeo Doubs, who, how good is he? I don't know. Like there was no player on the field this week that once he catches it, he could take it to the house. Christian Watson will be back this week. That'll help. Aaron Jones might be back this week. That'll help in that regard. There's a lot going on around him that isn't necessarily his fault. And I really do think that you have to pay attention to the game and what's going on around everything to appreciate what he's doing, but also keep in mind, I keep saying this, you cannot grade Jordan Love on a curve. The Packers have for everybody in this room, I'm sure you made fun of the Daniel Jones contract. Well, what contract do you think Jordan Love is going to get if he's just okay? Something like that. That's a pretty massive financial question that Green Bay has to answer. And if you're going to make a commitment and a team building statement like that, you better be right. And I think, again, the intangibles lead me to believe that the tangible stuff can get better. I just want to start seeing it because I really think for the most part, the games that the Packers have played from the quarterback position have mostly been the same. Some really, really good stuff and some not so good stuff mixed in there. And, good quarterback play doesn't just mean didn't turn the ball over. And I know Matt LaFleur says like that's point number one. And it is. But like I've seen Aaron Rodgers play some terrible games with no interceptions. And that's just using him as an example. It's possible to play poorly without turning the football over, which I think a lot of people like, what was the year? Was it 2018 where Rodgers only threw like 2 picks or something like that? But everyone pretty much agreed that like that was not a good season for him by any stretch.
Yeah,
like, and yeah, just because he only threw 2 picks, like big deal. But I thought the performance was good. Him making Demario Davis miss at the goal line, that was some high level stuff. The touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs, that was some nice stuff. I mean, they've got some stuff. There's stuff there. You can see it. It's just, there's an adjustment period for us as fans, and there's an adjustment period for those that want him to be really good already to the point where any sort of criticism is quote unquote hating. It's not hating. It's just reality. Good players can make bad plays too.
That stuff bothers me for sure. I know it does you. I know it does a lot of people. Like it's okay. Like it's all right to be honest about things. I am now dealing with this in my day job covering the Kansas City Chiefs because now not only am I on the Chiefs beat, I'm also on the lunatic 17-year-olds with unfiltered internet access who love Taylor Swift beat. And now I feel like I am constantly seeing stuff that makes me say, this is not how things work. You can be honest about a situation without being defensive about everything. I don't get that culture. I think it's okay. Like and I've told you the last 2 weeks, I've told you after the last 2 games, like I am progressively getting more and more all in on Jordan Love as the quarterback. Like, and I'm totally fine saying that. And also agreeing, like if you're going to be a floor raising player, and quarterbacks have to be both. We talked about that last week. You have to be able to raise the floor and to raise the ceiling. And to me, that is floor raising is even when you're off your game, even when you are not great. And Jordan Love for 3 quarters was not great this weekend. You're still good enough that your team is in the game, that your team is competing, that you have a chance to win any game. Whereas that ceiling raising part, I think we've already seen glimpses of, is that you can make throws. We had Mastodon in the YouTube comments, not the band, or at least I'm assuming it's not the band, making a comment saying, hey, the fact that he can throw the ball from all sorts of arm angles, that's hard to find. Yes, that is true. Like that's an impressive thing to have. Our guy, True North Packers fan, he just mentions, I see a little Favre gunslinger in him, which we all know that comes with the good and the bad. And as far as we know, it's all good, both on the field and off the field right now for Jordan Love. Like the greatness, the potential greatness, not great yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The potential greatness is obvious. Like you can see that in him. You just need to get to a point where, hey, let's not rely on having a historic 4th quarter comeback after sucking up the joint for the first 45 minutes of the game. That's where you have to go. And I think in terms of the process of a developing quarterback who I think I'm willing to say I'm willing to grade on a slight curve. I'm not talking full bell curve here. Like I'm not saying treat him like a rookie. I'm not saying this is like Bryce Young in Carolina where he's already hurt and his offensive line is garbage and his receiver, his best receivers are DJ Chark and old Adam Thielen. Like that's not the same situation. Or Anthony Richardson, who has to essentially like learn how to guide the ball where it's going. Like that's not what we're talking about. Just in terms of game experience, by the end of the year, this is not a first-year starting quarterback anymore. By the end of the year, we should be treating him fully, I think, like a more veteran quarterback because he will have seen essentially a full year of games.
And there are things with him now. Mm-hmm. He is not a rookie. And I think you've seen that through 3 weeks, like the difference between what a rookie, like if Jordan Love is a rookie, that game on Sunday spirals. I'm pretty sure of that. Like the experience that Love has of like seeing game situations and stuff like that probably helped him in this particular game. The one other thing that it just, can we please hit a damn deep ball? Like the balls down the field are not even close. Like they're overthrown by a mile or they're underthrown by a bunch. The inventor of the Oreo, Mark Trova, always likes to call it the Flacco offense, where you underthrow the ball and get pass interference out of it. And
all PI.
Right. Which like Green Bay, let me think. I think the last 2 weeks between the 2 games, they've had 4 massive pass interference penalties that have gotten them big yards down the field. Like that's just not sustainable. And we've seen that. The Packers had a year, I think it was 2015, where pass interference, or maybe it was 2016. I don't remember, but they got a boatload of pass interference calls. And that was like their entire offense. And there have been opportunities. It's not like Love has been trying to drop it in the bucket on every one of these deep throws. Like the Musgrave play comes to mind. There was a play he didn't throw the ball to Dobbs, instead he threw it to Wicks. Like they got to start coming closer on some of these deep balls. It has been, that to me is the most discouraging part of Love's performances over the first 3 weeks. And granted, some of it, like I've seen enough of the Samori Toure anything really, but the Samori Toure deep ball, like we don't need to be drawing up shot plays to Samori Toure. Like he's an XFL receiver. It is what,
I mean, it's fair. He's look, I don't want to be mean to the guy because he's in the 1% of the 1% because he's in the NFL. I get that. And I understand that, but like we have the tape. We know what he is. He's got a fun name and he went to a major school with rabid fans. Like that is why Samori Toure is a camp darling, and good for him. Good for him that he's got that sort of, fan base behind him, I guess. But like, what does he do that you don't get just from the guys who were healthy this week that Dobbs doesn't do, that Wicks doesn't do, that Heath doesn't do, that Reed doesn't do, that the young tight ends don't do? Like what is he offering? When we had those conversations during training camp, and I kept bringing up trimming the chaff from this roster and having fewer and fewer guys who are just bodies. And I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot into AJ Dillon and Patrick Taylor today, but those are some guys that for right now, they feel like they're just bodies. They are the numbers on the
without 50. Aaron Jones. They're the least explosive backfield in the, like Green Bay after this season could take their entire backfield, save for Aaron Jones, throw it in the trash and start completely over. And I would sign up. Like I could see this, and it's September. We're a long way till April, but I could see this being a year where they draft, 2 or 3 guys like they did in 20s, whatever year they drafted Jones and Jamal and Devontae Mays. Like they're running
17?
backs. Yeah, that sounds right. Their running backs and their running game as a whole stinks. They average 3.02 yards per carry. Their offensive line does an open hole. Like Vince Lombardi used to say, run to daylight. And this offensive line is a cloud of darkness. Like there is nothing there. And Aaron Jones will remedy some of that. Bakhtiari and Jenkins, if they're able to play at some point. And that's more for Bakhtiari than it is for Jenkins, just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. Like there's not a whole lot of room to go. But then, LaFleur has said after the game, or it was Monday for his availability, like they got to make the most of the opportunities when they're there. And that's blocking and runners. Like they've got to see the right holes and everything else. Patrick Taylor is Brandon Jackson, and Brandon Jackson's a nice player to have on your team, but they should strive for better and AJ Dillon. Sorry, man. It just is what it is at this point. Like,
yep.
There's nothing there. And there's nothing there. And with Emmanuel Wilson, looks like a really nice preseason story. And that's about it, which isn't that surprising. But in the same token, to your point, Samori Toure is that kind of player too. Like he's just a guy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's every team's got guys like that. Even the Kansas City Chiefs have guys like that. The Philadelphia Eagles have guys like that. But it's been important to have fewer and fewer of those guys. And I think the Packers are maybe still an off season or two away from, getting it down to that base level of guys you have to fill out the roster, as opposed to, thankfully we're not still seeing like Oren Burks starting games for the Packers, although he plays a lot in San Francisco, which is kind of wild to see. But you know what I mean? Like having fewer and fewer of those guys, adding back guys like a Christian Watson, 5 snaps of Christian Watson instead of Samori Toure. That is a floor raising and ceiling raising move for this offense. There's no doubt about that. I did want to touch really quickly on the defense after we get to Jordan Love here. You know my feelings about Joe Barry. I know your feelings about Joe Barry. We know the public's feelings about Joe Barry, and they're somehow stronger than the two of us, I think, or at least than me. And I'm not exactly thrilled about the guy. Things can change, and they have changed in the last couple of years. We've seen moments of, whoa, dang, defense, maybe for real, only for it to go back to being, a suck factor 10 on a scale of 5. But for all the criticism he got this week, the defense of the Packers only gave up 10 points. 7 of those points that the Saints scored came on special teams, and maybe we'll save the Bisaccia discussion for another day. But at least through 3 weeks of this season, do we maybe need to give at least a little bit more credit to the defense than they've gotten? Because they have been pretty consistent.
Yes. Like the first week of the season, you can toss that out the window. That's the worst team in the NFL and a minor league football team, like I mentioned earlier. They were doing well against Atlanta until the whole house of cards just kind of collapsed. And yeah, that's fair. Like that's just a bad matchup for them. But Peter Bukowski said it well, that like that Saints offense is a team they are built to stop. And they did. The Saints averaged just over 3 yards a carry. They had 77 yards on 22 carries. That was a big deal too. Like think about this. That game for the Saints is in a run script. And for those of you not familiar with that kind of terminology, like when you're down by a bunch, that's a passing script. And amazingly, the quarterback at Chicago can't muster 100 passing yards when they're losing 41-0 in a passing script. That's hilarious to me. But this game is a run script for New Orleans. They're winning 17-0 at halftime. Like if Green Bay's defense plays this week the same way they did last week against the run, the game is over because they can't get the damn ball back. And they didn't do that this week. They sacked the quarterback 4 times. Rashawn Gary is a one-man wrecking crew of a pass rush this week. Kenny Clark is the Marshawn Lynch run through a man's face.
He back? Are we saying Kenny Clark's back?
Oh, Kenny is back. Yes, sir. And if they are able to kind of limit his usage a little bit, I'm not saying don't play him most of the game, but take some of his snaps here or there. But not only that, one of the biggest like lines that I hate using this phrasing, but like the casual lines are like, oh, well, they didn't make any adjustments. Like, number one, teams make adjustments throughout, like from series to series. Just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean it didn't happen. And like, there's tangible stuff that's easy to spot. Like Carl Brooks played more than Colby Wooden did and Colby Wooden got his face caved in last week and only played like 10 snaps. That's an adjustment. Carl Brooks is playing more than Devontae Wyatt. That is an adjustment, just as an example. When Lucas Van Ness is not on a pitch count anymore, then he's going to play more than some of these other guys. That's adjustments. I think that obviously this offense this week again with Detroit is a little bit different than any of the ones they've faced so far. Detroit is the most explosive by quite a bit of these three offenses that they've played already. But 2 out of the 3 games, and again, the caveats of the first game are fair.
Mm-hmm.
The defense has been very good. And if they're, I mean, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But if they catch 1 interception against Atlanta, like one of the ones that were thrown to their guys, what's the conversation we're having with this defense then? Because then they win that game in Atlanta 31-12 instead of losing 25-24. Like, what's the conversation then? And I know that the go-to is always to blame the coordinator, and that's just how it is. And maybe you don't like the philosophy of the defense. I can understand that to some degree. But, I mean, if you give them all the blame when the defense stinks, then I think the defense and the coordinator deserve credit when they win, right? That would be the natural progression of how this, in theory, should work. But that never happens. Everybody wanted, I still laugh when everybody says their biggest hope for the season is Joe Barry gets fired. I hope that Joe Barry doesn't get fired, because you know who doesn't fire coordinators? Teams that have good defenses and teams that maybe go to and win the Super Bowl or something like that. Packers aren't winning the Super Bowl this season, obviously, but if you don't have to change the coordinators at the end of the year, that is objectively a good thing. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No. Do I expect this defense to fold like a house of cards eventually at some point? Yes. Maybe that's just what I'm conditioned to, but I think the whole defense deserves credit. They shut down New Orleans, and we'll see this week's a different challenge. Jahmyr Gibbs is the type of back I think they struggle with if the Lions are going to unleash him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is as good as it gets. This this Lions offensive line is pretty good. Jared Goff, when he's protected, is pretty good. Sam Laporta, big surprise. I didn't spend my whole offseason telling everybody this or nothing, but Sam Laporta, pretty damn good. This is a good offense.
Yep.
And these are the offenses that Green Bay has kind of struggled with slowing down, and that's where it gets frustrating. But I just think this is a really nice litmus test for them against and their defense. They slowed the Lions down last year, both times they played them. And this Lions offense was good. I just feel like the bad games, the problem with the Packers defense has been the bad games are just always historically bad. They give up 360 rushing yards in a game. That is something that actually happened last year.
I think for me, I'm looking at this very much in the sense of recap versus projection. In terms of projection, yeah, I'm not exactly looking forward to watching this defense for the rest of the year, if we're being completely honest. And yeah, there's a very legitimate chance that Thursday night gets ugly, even with a decent track record against Ben Johnson's Lions offenses last year, that things get ugly. And I am not looking forward to watching our linebackers try to chase after Jahmyr Gibbs. Not really thrilled about that matchup. But I think just in terms of reacting to what we have already seen, yeah, you give up 10 points in a game. I don't care who is on the other side. I don't care if someone gets injured. That doesn't matter to me. 10 points allowed in an NFL game is a good effort by your defense. It's a great effort by your defense, because in the long run, yes, things like, the advanced metrics tell us a story. They give important context. They're great for projection, things like that. But in the end, the thing that matters is the wins and the losses and the points you give up and the points you score. And at least to this point, even against the opponents the Packers have faced, and it has not exactly been a world-beating group of offenses, they have done a good job. They've been able to get after the quarterback. They are one of the top teams in the NFL, and I had it open a moment ago and I closed it. But EPA per dropback, expected points added per dropback, they are among the very best defenses in the league. Now, the run defense sucks. It is Garbo. It is Basura. It is so bad. And it has been so bad for so long, it makes you want to rip your hair out. But even then, even with that, and even though the Saints didn't have Alvin Kamara, you still made enough plays to win and to only allow 10 points. And for that, I think you deserve at least a little bit of credit. And now I'm ready for
here's the thing. You
48
mentioned
hours
the run
from now when people freak out again.
Yeah, but you mentioned the run defense, Atlanta. Okay, yes, 100%.
Good running team.
Yes, and I gave them an F in my grades for their run defense because everybody in the world knew that they were going to give the ball to Bijan Robinson. Here's one thing too, though. Bijan Robinson is special, and he's going to do that against a lot of teams. Not Detroit, apparently, who's really freaking good against the run, which is great considering the strength of the Packers team is not their run game. Nonetheless, week 1 against Chicago, take out Justin Fields' scrambles. And well, I'll let somebody else make the running back joke. I'll leave that one alone. But Chicago's running backs only average like 3.2 yards a carry. Like, if you take, you can't do this, and I hate doing that, but if you do butter knife this thing and take out the Bijan Robinson performance, 2 out of 3 games, the run D's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that's going to change or stay the same? I don't know. We're going to find out here with Detroit, kind of built to run the ball. Oakland, good Lord. Las Vegas, in theory, built to run with Josh Jacobs. Denver, not so much. The Vikings, not so much there that they get at the end of the month. But I think I've seen enough improvement even with the Robinson game to where I at least feel confident enough to say they're not going to finish 31st in the NFL against opposing teams' run games, which, hey, that's a low bar to clear, but damn it, we're looking for progress, aren't we?
We're raising the floor. We are raising the floor. How about that? Real quick, before we get to more on this Lions game, by the way, boy, he did it. Player of the week. Who stood out to you? Who is the impact guy memory from this game seared in your brain?
Yeah, I gave my game ball in my article to Jordan Love, the quarterback. But anybody who knows me knows a couple of things. I am incredibly on brand, if nothing else. I love pass rushers. And the pass rusher for the Packers is I'm also a good father, I'd like to think. And my son had a standout performance on Sunday. Rashawn Gary, the first 3-sack game of his career. He was emotional after the game, which was pretty cool to see. He really cares about this stuff, like a lot. Like, this is somebody that the Packers haven't, I don't think they're doing season-long captains, but if they do, he'll be a team captain one of these days. And he kind of already, he is, even though it isn't an official, Rashawn's not going to buy a diamond C to put on his jersey, but that's something that is happening for him. But 3 sacks, knocked Derek Carr out of the game, and that's one of the things that could be a byproduct of when you hit the quarterback a bunch, eventually those guys are smaller, they break. That's just how it is. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but Buddy Ryan once said that, quarterbacks must go down and they must go down hard. I ascribe to that theory 1,000%. I think the best way to beat guys in the future when Green Bay has to win games like that, Mahomes and Allen and Hurts and Herbert and all these dudes, is to hit them. And Rashawn Gary did that on Sunday, and it put Jameis Winston in the game. And then, their pass rush, I think Green Bay's pass rush is pretty damn good, man. I am excited about the prospects of this pass rush going forward. I think we're going to figure out by the end of the year that they're one edge guy short. And that includes natural progression from Hercules and some of those guys. But Rashawn Gary's the man. And Green Bay is going to give him an extension, and he's going to deserve every single penny.
I don't really feel the need to add anything more because I think he is the very obvious choice. It is, and I don't remember who brought this up on Twitter, and I would love to give credit for it from during the game, but it's been 10 months since he tore his ACL. And obviously all NFL players for the most part are physical specimens and athletic freaks and aliens and all of that. To be this good, even to have it fully recovered by this point is a miracle of modern science. To be this good and this powerful and this explosive 10 months after tearing your ACL is remarkable. It's incredible. And he is an incredible player. They're going to get a deal done. I'm certain of it. You've brought up before that, look, name a player who is a Packers homegrown talent who they wanted to keep, who they didn't keep. And no, Devontae Adams doesn't count because he was looking for his 3rd contract at that point. They're going to get the deal done. You don't let a talent like that walk away, because I think he really is in that top tier pass rushers.
Yeah, and listen to the way they talk about him to a man in that locker room. And the people who matter too, like Matt LaFleur and Joe Barry and his position coach, whose name I can't pronounce very well, and Brian Gutekunst and all those things. The other thing about Gary, he's had one wiped away by a penalty, but he has 5 sacks in 3 games, and he's playing 20 snaps a game. And granted, some of that productivity is going to go down because the more snaps you play, like he comes into the game, he's got fresh legs, which is dangerous. But I don't think that's going to stay the same, obviously, but he is an absolute freakazoid. One thing about this is they didn't want to keep Casey Hayward, and you could say that's good or bad, but they didn't want to keep Casey Hayward. The same is true of Micah Hyde. Like you heard them talk about after the fact that Green Bay didn't really make offers. That might have been a mistake in hindsight, obviously, but Green Bay doesn't lose guys that they want to keep. And especially guys, not one player has ever left that they've wanted to keep getting a second contract, like you mentioned with Devontae. But we're running out of clock here, so let's make our way to we're on to Detroit.
We're on to Detroit, and the storyline for this week, I think, has already been developed more so than, hey, remember last year when the Lions knocked the Packers out of the playoffs, and the Lions are the new hotness, are they the new kings of the North? God, I hate that. I never watched Game of Thrones, so that phrase means absolutely nothing to me. But we already have heard it. Aaron Jones is expecting to play. The Packers are expecting Aaron Jones to play on Thursday. Sounds like everyone's expecting, and Christian Watson himself is expecting CW9 to be out there for this game on Thursday. I have written here the full arsenal as in terms of the weapons are going to be active with Jones and Watson back. No one knows about David Bakhtiari. David Bakhtiari doesn't know about David Bakhtiari at this point. And Elgton Jenkins, I don't expect back for another couple of weeks anyway. But how optimistic are you that this game is more winnable and, frankly, that both 33-9 are going to be able to go on Thursday?
Per league source, Christian Watson expects to play, and I know he said that today, but he has told other people that as well.
Multiple sources do confirm.
Multiple sources do confirm, and especially the ones that I make up and the ones that are named Trust Me, Bro. But seeing LaFleur today say that he kind of poo-pooed Watson a little bit. He said that he's got to get medically cleared first, so we'll see on him. Jones, he said he was cautiously optimistic. I just want to see Jordan Love with all the guys. That's something that we haven't seen yet. Watson, Dobbs, Jones, I want them all. Wicks, all those guys. And and this is a week too, where everybody says next man up, next man up, next man up. But the next man up usually sucks. And that's just how it is. That's why they're the next man and not the man. And it's hard to win in the NFL without your stars. Green Bay had the slimmest of margins, and it took a miraculous comeback for them to come back and win on Sunday against New Orleans without all those guys. So hopefully, defensively, I feel like Jair Alexander is a huge deal this week because Green Bay if he doesn't play, they don't have a corner that can match. If they play man coverage against Amon-Ra St. Brown, they don't have a guy who can match up with him at all. They don't have Rasul Douglas. I love him. I think he's been off to a really good start for this season, but that's not the style of receiver that he matches up well with. And Keyshawn Nixon, not doing a great job of making me look smart on my breakout player. I feel like he's played better the last 2 weeks for sure, but the passer rating against him is 130. So I think they need those guys back. They said today Zach Tom was a limited participant. That helps because Aiden Hutchinson is a coming. And
yep.
I think you need as many of those starting linemen as you can get with that guy. He has 19 pressures and 2 sacks in 3 games. And against the Packers in 2 games last year, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception. This is a guy who, in my opinion, changes the culture of places he's at. And you guys saw what happened at the University of Michigan. They beat Ohio State. Shout out Dan Kotnick that year for the first time in forever and ever. And
sound the alarm.
Right, exactly. They did that. And then now in Detroit, they went from second pick in the draft to one of the hottest teams, one of the, preseason hype teams kind of thing. And I'm not saying Hutchinson's the sole purpose for that, but he's on his way, in my opinion, to being one of the best players in the entire sport on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if he'll ever be like Nick Bosa or somebody like that, but he's very, 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 very good.
Yep.
And they need those. I think they need Zach Tom to have a chance on that. I don't think Nyman is a good matchup for him, and Rasheed Walker will be making his 3rd ever start if Bakhtiari can't play. So that's a problem. And Iowa Joe, I suggest that you go back and maybe watch what happened when those two matched up against each other in college. Maybe that won't change anything here, but we'll see. That's a big matchup of the week.
I'm also going to need a change in phrasing from our guy, Iowa Joe. I do not want to see the words Walker is going to hump Hutchinson.
Are you not familiar? In college, Rasheed Walker, there's a video of him. Like, he buries a guy. I think he's from Maryland. And you can see him literally, like, humping him, for lack of better phrasing.
I'm not familiar with that. And I'm going to have to look it up now. Yeah. I will have to view it, but I don't want to. And I'm mad now that I have to look this up. So thank you both. Now I get to look at that. Great. Awesome. Thank you, Rasheed Walker, for being the cat.
Brendan has seen that as many times as Cade McNamara scored points for Iowa on Saturday against Penn State.
I love Big Ten trash talk. Makes me miss home. Yeah, I mean, that's the number one thing, right, is just wanting to see everyone out there together. And I know I'm just repeating everything you just said, so I will leave your points alone, but that's what I want to see. And of course, the way football works, the way the NFL works, is everyone's going to be healthy. Everybody who was out last week is going to be in this week, and then the Packers are going to lose like 26-6, and that's just how football works. And I'm not wishing that happens. I'm not going to predict that happens, but that's the NFL sometimes. But I'm just excited to see it. I'm excited to see a throw from Jordan Love to Christian Watson in a game that actually matters and not at family.
How excited are you to see two guys in the slot, and it's Christian Watson and Luke Musgrave? How excited are you to see that specifically?
Horny. Yeah. Solidly horny.
Okay. Yeah. That's good.
I mean,
might make you hump an opposing team's linebacker like Rasheed Walker.
Yeah. We'll get some hump action. We're gonna hashtag hump every single time that one of these dudes catches a pass. I might just like schedule 10 tweets that just say hump in them during the game on Thursday.
If you do that, I will retweet all of them. You have my promise.
All right, perfect. I need the engagement. All right. Final thing, let's get to game picks for the week. I have a typo on the thing. Isn't that great? It's not Saints game this week. It's Packers versus Lions this week. Divisional matchup, second divisional matchup already this season for the Packers. It is at Lambeau Field. This line opened up Packers by 1.5. It has jumped the fence. Lions by 1.5. Over-under is 45.5. Before we get out of here, Jacob, what's your pick?
Two evenly matched teams, in my opinion. It's just a matter. You can guarantee me that Detroit is healthier. And I can't, again, Matt LaFleur basically said, well, I'm not so sure about Christian Watson. And he said cautiously optimistic about Aaron Jones. Like, I can see a world where they're like teetering the line and saying, well, let's just give them 11 more days and then we'll have them ready on, that Monday nighter against the Vegas Raiders or something like that. But you can guarantee me that Detroit's healthy. You can't guarantee me that Green Bay's healthy. For that reason, I think Detroit wins in a squeaker. I like them 23-20, but I can easily see this. Like, again, if Jones and Watson and all those guys, like, if you tell me everybody for Green Bay plays, then I think Green Bay's better. And that's, crazy to say, but that is how I feel right now. If everyone's healthy, but everyone's not. So
yeah. I'm really frustrated that you picked that score because that's the exact same score I was going to go with. So I'll bump up the point total. I'm going to go with the Lions too. And again, it's just a matter of the health here. And it's a matter of understanding that there will be peaks and there will be valleys. And the first three quarters this past Sunday, a deep, deep valley. The fourth quarter, a high, high peak. And it is going to keep fluctuating. And over time, the expectation, the hope, the optimism is that those valleys become closer and closer to sea level while the peaks remain high. I don't know that we have enough of a sample size to predict that's going to happen yet in this game. So I'll be the pessimist here. I'll go Lions 27-23 over the Packers. I'm not crazy confident in that. Like, I'd put it at 55% Lions, 45% Packers. I think Green Bay has a very good chance to win this game. I just think there are too many variables, and I'm not a huge fan of making a pick based on variables. Of course, we'll be recapping the game coming up next Tuesday, so a little bit after the game, live on the Pick Six right here on all the Game On Wisconsin channels. Big fun week this past Sunday. Jacob got to be there. He got to experience history in the flesh. You going to make it up for Thursday night?
I am.
Hey, look at this. We've got our own true insider on the show now. Jacob Westendorf, Packer insider from Packer Central and Sports Illustrated. We are looking forward, though, to being back with you coming up next week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us live on the Pick Six. And, of course, if you missed any of the show, want to relive it, or maybe you're listening for the first time, check us out anywhere you can get your podcasts as well. Just make sure you're subscribed to the Game on Wisconsin podcast feed. We will join you coming up next week for the one and only Jacob Westendorf. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. This has been the Pick Six on Game on Wisconsin.